The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of Worldwide Digital Broadcasting Corporation.
Knowledge is power, and this is powerful stuff. Wellness Education Cannabis Advocates of Nevada present the We Can 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour with the We Can radio team. For the next 60 minutes, we'll take an in-depth look at the cannabis reform revolution sweeping the nation. Now, let's fire up the news hour. Here is the We Can radio team.
Good afternoon, and thank you again for joining us for another episode of the Nevada Cannabis News Hour. I'm your, host for the day, Perry Haichu, and this is my co-host and good friend, Mike McAuliffe. And how are you doing this afternoon, Mike?
Doing well. Happy to see another legislative session of Nevada in the dust, in history, because one of the best things about Nevada is that legislature meets only for 4 months every other year, so they can get us into limited trouble.
No doubt about it.
So, but this was a big year for pot in the legislature.
It seems like every year from here on out, very well may be a big year for pot now that the cat's out of the bag. Well, it was a mixed bag of results, though. Mm-hmm. You know, no one bats 1,000.
No.
And
no.
I wouldn't call it a total loss, but I wouldn't call it a slam dunk victory either.
Well, it depends on where you're looking from. I think from Governor Sandoval's position, he's a clear winner because among the bills that came forth this session was Senate Bill 487, which was based on his proposal for how the tax monies are going to be going. And there were 3 different proposals, and there were 2 Democratic proposals, one which was more clearly Democratic and one which was trying to bridge the difference. But in the end, the governor got his way on this.
He wins a lot. These things tend to happen.
Yeah, they do in an executive. So we have an article in front of us from the Las Vegas Sun, and props to Chris Kudalis, who's been doing really terrific work this session in this whole area. And he's got a good article in yesterday's Sun, and it's entitled "Recreational Pot Advocates Pleased with Nevada's Legislature Strides." And so I just said nice things about Chris before I tear into him for that headline there, because I'm not sure too many advocates were really pleased with what was going on.
No, well,
that's how it goes.
Depends how you define advocate, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. So originally there were 48 different mentions of different bills that had cannabis-related issues. This year got down to about 19 of them that really got into a bill form as they were moving forward, and as the session moved on, it kind of winnowed down. And it's amazing how much horse trading gets done in the legislature, especially in the last minutes. If you recall in 2013, when you were up in Carson City, that the cannabis bill, Senate Bill 374, was one of the last bills to get passed in the legislature.
Oh, yeah, I believe it was on the very last or the second to last day.
Indeed. And just several days ago, the Republicans in the Senate voted as a party to block the 10% tax increase, which would have killed the governor's plan to have a $70 million revenue from those taxes into the education budget. And it really wasn't even a fight about pot per se. It was the Republicans wanting to funnel money out of the public education of schools into educational savings accounts so that people who wanted to send their kids to private schools could get a $5,000 credit to go to private school. The Democrats fundamentally didn't like it, and the Republicans were fundamentally for it. And
I'm not sure how I feel.
Personally, growing up in the New York City Board of Education system, I believe in a robust public education system, and I think it's good for the country in general.
No doubt. There's no question that we need to have good public education because a lot of the families just cannot afford, even with those educational vouchers, to send their kids to the private schools that they would desire. And for that reason, you have to have good base education, and it's a sign of the health of the overall community, I believe. But you can't It seems like our solution with schools in Nevada is to just throw money at the problem over and over and over again. We've seen this.
Well, we have this bloated Clark County School District, we're fifth largest in the nation.
Which is absurd. We're not the fifth largest municipality in the country, not even close. Not even close. And it's just one of those things. They voted to break up the school district a couple of years ago. Nothing has been done about it. And it's hard for me to continue to willingly allocate taxpayer money, additional taxpayer funds, until there's some accountability, until the top heavy, there's some real accountability with it.
Kids still need to be educated, and that's part of why some of these people are looking to take a chunk of that into private school. But as I recall, a few years ago, I talked to a parent who had a couple of girls in Bishop Gorman, and they were something on the line of $18,000 a year.
The private school I attended in high school was significantly more expensive, even in the early 2000s, than $5,000 a year. It helps for sure. And also, I don't want to put it this way, but I feel like you do a disservice to the people who work hard, take the risk, and save their money to send their kids to private school. Because if they want their kids exposed to a certain environment with certain people, certain demographics, whatever they choose, and then you force these private schools to take whoever wants to go in there because you're going to pay them to do it, well, those kids, those families bring those problems with them. And now the schools are forced to deal with those problems, and these parents are left going, well, what the hell are we paying here for? And it just seems like the hard workers, once again, don't get rewarded. And those who get handouts get reward. You know what I mean? It just seems like one of those things.
But isn't that a natural outgrowth of the Republican philosophy of small government is better, and big schools, public schools are big government, and so their feeling is that if you get the government out of it, the private schools will be more responsive to the parents. But your argument that parents who are paying for a significant amount of money,
a staggering amount of money
into a private school, all of a sudden having that diluted, and I don't want to say socially diluted or the wrong type of people or anything, but maybe many of those private schools were economic or scholastic powerhouses, and so if you're bringing in a lot of new people from the outside, you may be diluting that supercharged effect.
Well, of course, you have the ability to affect their overall test scores, which may affect their rankings, which affect the prestige of the institution, et cetera, so on and so forth. These schools spend a lot of private money in order to build their reputations up to the point to where they're not lopped in with the public schools. And here we are taking public school children and forcing the issue into their schools. And that's fine. I want kids to get a good education, but at what expense?
Sure. And you might be listening to this show and saying, well, what does this have to do with pot? But and that's
it's because it's where the money's going.
Yeah, exactly. It's a case where it really it's a different issue than cannabis entirely, but because of the money, it gets drawn in, and not
only that, but here's another issue, real quick. Let's talk about these private schools. A lot of these are religious institutions, and a lot of them are vehemently opposed to the recreational legalization of marijuana. So should those same schools, entities, municipalities, we talked about this last week, if the local municipalities, counties, cities, etc., if they don't want it, why should they receive a portion of the tax revenue from the risk that's taken for doing it? If there's so much federal risk or whatever, then you should separate yourself from it entirely and not take the money either. And the same goes for these religiously biased schools that are so against weed. Well, that's fine. Then you don't have to take the tax credit money that's coming from this weed, and you can tell the children of this, the parents of the kids, that is your reasoning.
Well, I'll support your election to a university regent seat or a school board seat.
Sure.
But anyway, so the governor's bill, tax bill, got defeated on a party line vote in the last several days of the session. But then, in the last 48 hours of the session, there was a lot of horse trading back and forth, and there was no way that the governor, let alone the Democrats, wanted to let that potential $70 million per biennium get away from them. And so they did a little bit of horse trading there and got a couple of Republicans to come on board. So Senate Bill 487 did pass, and it mandates a 10% excise tax on recreational marijuana sales for the state's rainy day fund. So originally it was supposed to go completely into education. Now it sounds like it's going into the general slush fund,
which kind of sucks because they can do whatever they want with it, but I guess you can't really attack someone for a specific special interest anymore.
Yep. Let's see, what else did they pass? Senate Bill 344.
Before we move on from that, I read the further we get into this, the more I think that we may have made a terrible mistake with the way that we went about legalizing cannabis. I've been listening and I've been reading more and more articles, and I heard the grumblings from what they called whacktivists back in the day, and I didn't really give them enough credit to the fact that we should have probably looked more seriously at decriminalizing rather than legalizing, taxing, and regulating, because it seems like the system we have now is so overwhelmingly biased toward a certain small group of people who really had no interest in the cannabis industry before there was money in it, that it has poisoned the good-natured intentions of the original people who were trying to get the bill passed.
I think those original good-natured intentions were coming from people who had no real power within the industry.
No, of course not. And I saw, Tommy Chong released a statement a while ago, and he was like, to hell with taxing and regulating. We just need to decriminalize and let people live their lives and things like that. But it's way too late for that.
Yeah.
So we have what we have, and all we can do, I guess, is do our best to control this beast that we've helped to create.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. As far as legalization versus decriminalization, the problem I have with decriminalization just in general is it just means that the police or anyone else can just say, well, you're a crook. You're a bad person because you're doing something illegal. Just because we're not putting you in jail, you're still wrong.
They still already do, and that's what I've come to. They still hate you. They still will demonize you and cast you down with the dogs if they had the choice. They'll just use the federal mandate instead.
Yes.
There's nothing stopping them from keeping that mindset. I see it on a regular basis still. So while I hear you, we deal with this every day, and the more and more law enforcement types that come on the bandwagon now, trying to get into the cannabis industry, makes me even laugh even more at the hypocrisy that I see from that side of the aisle, or that side of, what would I call it? That's societal.
The blue line of law enforcement, who has been so stringent that this is bad. I've had discussions with law enforcement officials who say, marijuana is responsible for kids' bodies lying in the street and this and that.
Sure.
And so now for them to be coming around and cashing in on it,
I know I'm kind of circling. I'm kind of like all over the place here, but I'm trying to kind of keep it focused here to a certain extent.
Okay.
Sorry about that, Mike.
No, that's quite all right. So let's see, getting on to other bills that were passed, and this happened really in the last day of the legislature, these bills. Senate Bill 344 requires child-proof, opaque, colored packaging for edibles and restricts THC content per package. I believe it's going to be a 400 milligram per package limit. I have no problem with child-proof caps. I mean, that's okay by me. Some of the other stuff that was in that bill, I believe that was the bill that was also going to prevent cannabis.
I hope that language was stricken beforehand, but I got a feeling it probably was not.
I have not had the time, but by the next broadcast, I'm going to read all these bills now that they've passed and give our listeners some detail on that. Another one that was just signed at the end was Assembly Bill 422, which would reduce the cost of medical marijuana cards from $75 to $100 down to $50. And I had read an earlier version of this bill. In general, I think it was really good. It took a lot of the formal medical marijuana program and kind of brushed it away now that we have legalization, requiring only that a patient provide their identification for name, address, birth date, and a doctor's recommendation, and that the dispensaries themselves could transmit this information up to the state. With what's going on, and we'll talk about other things, it's good that the price is coming down. A lot of people that I've talked to think that the only reason, though, to have a medical marijuana card now is if you've had one for at least 4 years and are currently grandfathered in to grow. Because in a lot of other ways it doesn't seem like there's much.
I think that's going to be hard to hold up in a court of law. Like, there's going to be a test where someone's going to get their card and start growing, and they're like, well, you weren't grandfathered in, and it's just like, what Nevada jury is really going to convict on those grounds? Like, so we're going to see a case test eventually.
Which is why you didn't see a couple of years ago, after that one case where the fellow who had a couple of dozen plants and several pounds and was a medical patient, and the Clark County DA's office prosecuted him. The jury acquitted him, and we have not seen another marijuana case come through.
Well, of course, and unfortunately, that's what it takes, is because it takes a trickle-down effect. Well, if juries won't convict, DAs won't prosecute. If DAs won't prosecute, police won't arrest. So, you have to start with the courts and have that trickle down through the system to have it be known that they're wasting their time.
And it's also important to note there, what you're saying is valid, and that when somebody gets to a trial, when it gets actually to that point, generally the prosecution has a bunch of evidence, and also if you statistically look at it, the conviction rate is over 95%. And so
it's because that's not the conviction rate, that's the plea deal rate. That's a very they call it a conviction rate.
They're both.
So once you go to trial, you have a 90% chance of getting convicted?
Yes.
That's horrible.
So and 96% of all cases do get pled out. But of those remaining 4%, over 90% of them result in convictions. And now this is on the federal level, but the idea is that really the impartial jury to decide innocence or guilt and beyond a reasonable doubt and all that sort of stuff is so cowed into the mindset that of the officialdom and of the prosecution and the people and the integrity of the police and all this sort of stuff that objective line really isn't in the middle and where's the evidence going to weigh. That objective line is already leaning way over on the prosecution side.
Well, I guess what that means is there's an aura of statist mentality among juries. We would say at that point.
Absolutely, there is.
If the law is the law, is the law.
Some of the things we've got here that 422.
Oh yeah, AB 422 also went through, and it says it was going to move the medical marijuana program to the Department of Taxation. Medical and recreational marijuana could be regulated by the same body.
And let's talk about that for a minute. So now you have a medical marijuana program that has been run by the Division of Health that is there to purportedly work in the interests of sick Nevadans.
Won't this be the third government entity that's taken control of the program since its inception?
And now taxation. So, but I'm just curious how the Department of Taxation is in any way set up to understand and address the medical issues of patients.
It's not the medical issues. They're just looking at the monetary side of it because there's going to be tax revenue coming through it. So they're just like, which department does this fit in most easily? Mm-hmm. And so they set it there. Really, this harkens back to the 2013 legislative session when we had a chance to create the Department of the Marijuana Control Board, everything, and we decided not to do that in the interest of saving a little bit of money, I believe was the thought process behind that at the time. And if we inserted that language, it would be not beneficial to the Republicans who ended up trying to screw us over anyway. So we should have pushed for that a little harder looking back on it, but once again, all we can do now is try to control the beast that we've created. So
we'll see. What else does 422 do?
It increases the time for medical marijuana card renewals. The current cards must be renewed annually.
I think it goes to a 2-year card now.
That's what I heard also.
That's a good thing.
Nothing wrong with that. Medical conditions aren't going to change over the course of a year, especially a lot of these incurable diseases that people come down with.
And that's the next step. And our good friend Tick Sagerblom says you go for what you can get past.
Sure.
So we do that every time. So next time we want to be looking at taking people who, as you say, have chronic
conditions,
permanent conditions, sure, multiple sclerosis, for example. You shouldn't have to renew your card every couple of years. You got a condition for life. The state should understand that, not get in the way, and give you that card for a minimum 10-year period. Just like passports.
Oh, absolutely. That'd be nice.
What else do we have?
And then finally, it reduces the cost of medical marijuana cards from $75 to $50, which is fine, we alleviate the burden from the patients. I think the medical marijuana program has made enough money at this point to where they don't have to depend solely on the revenue from getting these applications to sustain the program anymore. They can look to other sources like these dispensaries that they're getting. So it becomes less and less necessary for them to do this.
But I mean, if you look at currently, I'm going to say about 22,000. It's a little more than that patients in the program. So if you're talking about $100 per patient, now you're talking $2.2 million, right?
It's a lot of money.
22,000, yeah. And so it's not inconsequential. However, it's dwarfed by the amount of money that the division took in from the application fees.
And I think the steps that they're taking are going to have a positive effect on the rate of medical marijuana patients. I think that you're going to see a large, this is obvious. Anyone could look at this and see this trend happening, but they're lowering the cost of the cards. They're giving you the card for a longer period of time.
Right.
And not only that, but the taxes that are going to be implemented on recreational marijuana will be such that it will be significantly cheaper to purchase your cannabis as a medical patient.
Right.
And if we are ever able to get these gun rights laws fixed up, a lot of people would be very willing to see those savings.
Yes, yeah, I think so. I mean, historically, in other states, anytime you have legalization, the number of participants in their medical cannabis program goes down. However, we are doing things differently here, and that's we'll get to a little later. We see the different states are going about this reform in different ways, and that's exactly how the founding fathers intended. Let's get through a little more of these here. What do we have? Assembly Bill 259. I support this one strongly. It will allow those convicted of past marijuana-related crimes involving an equal or lesser amount of what's legal, that's an ounce, or if they're a patient, 2.5 ounces, to have that crime vacated from their criminal records. That kind of expungement is important, and I hope we see it around the nation as cannabis reform happens. So this is a good idea. Let's see, what else got signed by the governor? Marijuana rights for tribes, and that's Senate Bill 375, allows the governor's office to negotiate with tribal governments and use for the use of sale and sale of medical marijuana. And so I understand that the Paiutes are very, very seriously in talks about developing a resort on their property, and it's not too dissimilar to something that happened last year up in South Dakota, where one of the tribes tried to go forward with that, and even though they were protected from U.S. government prosecution on this, what the government did was all their non-Native American consultants, they indicted them instead. So we'll have to see what the government's going to say about this one, but it's a good thing to allow wider ownership here, and I support giving the natives a chance to get into this industry.
Oh, absolutely! They deserve everything all the good things in the world that are coming to them.
They kept this country nice to us for several thousand years before we came in and took over the lease. So we should definitely help there. Senate Bill 277 that was also signed is disclosure on parolees involved in medical cannabis, and basically what this does is allows the Division of Health and eventually, I guess, the Division of Taxation to report to parole and probation if patients are on the medical cannabis program, because there have been incidents where people who have been medical cannabis patients are on probation, they get violated and then they get tossed in jail. So this should address that, and it is a good thing. So there actually have been a bunch of good bills coming through. Assembly Bill 135, no urine test for marijuana DUI suspects. Rather than peeing in a cup if they think you're under the influence, they'll have to draw your blood. And in past shows now, I've been initially very skeptical of this bill because I thought that it was just another way that law enforcement could hassle somebody, because they could say, okay, we're pulling you off to the side of the road, this, that, and everything. However, in some conversation, I realized that if an officer is going to be doing that, and pulling people out of their car on the highway and leaving the car on the side of the road, where then the state is responsible and they may have to tow it off, and you're taking somebody to get their blood medically drawn and all this now, so you're off patrol for a while. If you're not right, you as the officer are going to get a bunch of feedback from your higher ups, and if you have a pattern of that and you're not right, it will give the officer more grief.
So you're
than
saying
benefit.
that this new departmental policy, depending on which entity of law enforcement enforces it, how they choose to interpret it, it may cause the officers more problem than the constituents, depending on if they keep guessing wrong?
That because of the potential for negative feedback if they're wrong, I don't think they will be as freewheeling with dragging people out of their car and taking them down to the UMC, as
maybe you're right, but honestly, I have become even more cautious / paranoid, whatever the word you want to use, while I'm driving now, because I don't want to admit how many times I've been pulled over after I've been smoking grass. It happens to the best of us. I feel like they weren't looking for it as much. There wasn't as much official training. They were looking for alcohol. They were looking for this or that. But now, well, we're looking for the dope, and we know what to look for. If your eyes are red, or if this or that or the other, or they're going to be searching for that more, especially with younger people. So I'm just afraid that, once again, we may have created a beast here, and we might have more enlightened them to the fact as an unintended consequence of legalization.
I don't agree. I think they could always recognize people who were stoned, and they had no
the number of
hesitation
DUI arrests are going up significantly ever since legalization. Now, is that because they're targeting marijuana
but the
people?
number of alcohol DUIs
are going down for sure, no doubt.
And that's not as necessarily a terrible thing, because people who are under the influence of cannabis are aware of this much more so than people who've been drinking. And even you just said you cautiously slow down and you're making these conscious decisions. I don't think that I don't think this is going to be as bad as I originally thought.
Only time will tell. And it seems, as I see the stories on the news, there was an event that Metro held maybe a couple months ago that was where you would come up and put these drunk goggles on or whatever and try to drive a go-kart. Yeah. And they were like, this is what it's like when you're under the influence of the dope, of the marijuana. And all of the public thread comments on all of the news sources were like, this is bullshit. This is nonsense. You need to come up with a more significant test, and I would love to see a thing where I know a lot of advocates who would love to smoke right in front of the cops and do a controlled test and show them how wrong they are.
Yeah.
But of course, to actually have such a reasonable
on
test,
a private track.
Well, of course, but still, it's just like people don't want to see that because that doesn't fit into their worldview. Right.
But the other thing I would like to mention about that, where you're saying that you think that DUID arrests for cannabis will go up, yes, that's possible. But it's also then, because now if you have legalization and you have more people smoking or more people being open about their smoking, and maybe then more of them will get behind the wheel. So I can understand
that's going to happen.
I can understand that DUI arrests may go up on that, but it's because I think that the same reason that cops have always gone after pot smokers. It's low-hanging
It's easy.
fruit.
It's
so
easy.
And I
As
don't think that
meanwhile we
drivers
have
under the influence of cannabis are anywhere near as dangerous as those under the influence of alcohol.
Well,
and
absolutely.
I think the police would candidly agree with that as well. But if they pull them over, they smell it. Wow, hey, there's some easy overtime. Thank you very much.
Oh, and
Mr.
not only
Motorist.
that, but now that the legislature has, in their infinite wisdom, decided to abolish and outlaw marijuana public consumption lounges or any public use whatsoever, you're going to have these people smoking all over the place, including in their cars, in the hotel rooms. Well, sure, I did it when I was younger. I won't do it ever again now. I think it's ridiculous.
President Obama did it. Didn't seem to hurt him too much.
And Clinton and Bush.
Yeah.
But still,
Yeah. And you see, the last 3 presidents we had, didn't matter which party they were from, things are screwed up. We may not, one side or other, have liked them, but we knew we'd all get through it. Now we come to a president who's never touched pot in his entire life, and look what the world is coming to.
He actually,
You know?
well, the guy never drank alcohol either, but owns an alcohol brand. It's like I said, if it was recreationally legal, he'd probably have Trump dope and gold leaf cigarettes.
So let's see, what else have we got here? I do want to get
And
to
people
this
would buy
story
them.
so we can get to other things. More leniency for hemp research. That's Senate Bill 396. This is basically piggybacked off the U.S. Farm Bill of 2014, which first enabled hemp to be researched under controlled conditions, and the legislature over the past couple of sessions have been the Nevada legislature has been gearing the law to permit this. And existing law allows universities to grow and research industrial hemp. The new bill allows plants with a THC percentage of less than 0.03% to be more widely grown and researched. So that's a good thing.
That's never a bad thing, no doubt about it.
Yeah, more research isn't a bad thing.
I remember talking to a guy a couple of years ago who wanted to sell me his pine tree farm in Armagosa Valley and turn it into an industrial hemp field, and there wasn't the legality for it at the time.
I was reading another story that in Florida, with the medical marijuana program that they've got going there, that there are a lot of old caning factories and other fruit produce factories that are sitting idle, that these guys are talking to the legislature and say, hey, let us get in this business. We've got the capital infrastructure here. Let's move forward.
That's only a matter of time. Hemp's going to be a big deal in the next 10 years or so. You'll see like hempcrete and all that kind of stuff. Like, people have been whispering about it for a long time, but it'll get there.
Hey, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back to this story. We've been talking long already, but we'll be right back. Stay with us.
My name is Janine Evans, and I am the office manager at Getting Legal, and we help people get their medical marijuana cards. Anyone can be approved for a medical marijuana card as long as they have a pre-existing medical condition. The medical conditions recognized in Nevada include severe pain, severe nausea, muscle spasms, seizures, glaucoma, cancer, HIV or AIDS, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Our staff helps every patient determine before they come in for a visit whether or not they will qualify. We take care of the whole process of getting a medical marijuana card from the state of Nevada from start to finish. Our services include paperwork processing, a physician's visit, notary services. All of our patients pick up their approval letters right here in our office. We make it fast, simple, and easy. During your consultation, we will discuss different products available at the dispensaries, such as edibles, lotions, and concentrates. We will also discuss different ways to medicate, such as smoking or vaporizing. You will receive a separate identification card identifying you as a medical marijuana patient. This is used to enter the dispensaries and only to enter the dispensaries. Every veteran receives a discount off of the full price of their card. We also offer discounts to anyone working within the medical marijuana industry. All you need to do is call 702-979-9999, and a member of our friendly staff will help you schedule an appointment.
And we're back.
Here we are, yes, in stereo, no less. So we're talking about what's going on here in Nevada this legislative session, bills that made it, bills that didn't. And we got through things that were signed, and now things that didn't. Apprenticeship program. Senate Bill 416 would have allowed medical marijuana establishments to apply for and carry out state apprenticeship programs. And the reason that the governor gave for vetoing this, which would have been a good bill for citizens and workers in Nevada, was that he felt that since the apprenticeship program gets some federal fundings, passing this bill, signing this bill into law, would put that federal money at risk. And I've got to say that a few years ago, when I went to the University of Nevada Cooperative Extension to talk to the people of the Master Gardener program about including medical cannabis cultivation education, they said exactly the same thing. They would love to do it. They were really on board with it, but they received 5% of their funds from the federal government, and that was a significant amount of money, and they just couldn't risk it. So
I didn't
I
realize the
understand.
master gardeners knew.
Pardon me?
I didn't realize that the master gardeners in Nevada
They're
were
very
even
cool
aware
people.
of that.
Oh yes, absolutely. I've had plenty of private discussions with them, but they can't. It's not something they can put on their curriculum. Also, that didn't pass was Tick Segerblom's Senate Bill 374. It would have given us more qualifying medical conditions, which would have been a good thing. It would have been given protection for licensing board members, professionals, doctors, nurses, and stuff who are involved in some way with the industry. And it would also permitted people to bring in their own cannabis-infused oils to a spa and have the massage use those infused oils on them. Apparently, that was too dangerous for the governor, so we didn't get that one.
When I was in West Virginia and was talking to a massage therapist at a bar who would love to do the same thing, and I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, is this really such a big deal among massage therapists that are so wanting to use these THC and CBD infused products that it necessitates legislative action? And apparently it does, because even back east there is not curiosity but anticipation,
absolute interest
on the idea that this could be a healing therapy that will add to the benefits of their skill set.
Absolutely. And also there's the fact that, if you go in and you get a massage and you've just been drenched in cannabis oil and worked in it and everything, you're going to come out of that massage feeling pretty good. Now, if you're the massage tech and you're giving 8 or 9 cannabis massages a day and your hands are in the oil for 8 or 9 hours, you're going to feel pretty good too, I think.
Oh, that had never crossed. I hadn't crossed my mind. Can THC be absorbed in through the skin like that? Is
Sure.
it transdermal possible?
Well, of course, there are all sorts of cannabis.
I thought those were only
salves
CBD
and
though. I
patches
didn't
and
realize
this
that THC could be absorbed transdermally like that. That's interesting.
Well,
There you go. Learn something new every day.
From what I've read, it can. I'm going to research that even further, though. Let's see what else. The big one, though, that really. Well, okay, there are a couple. Senate Bill 379 would have designated revenue from the MedPop program for agencies that provide child welfare services for alcohol and drug abuse and behavioral health programs. It didn't make it out of Assembly, and they have very tough deadlines there.
They already had
in the Assembly.
They already had that money spoken for.
They had that money spoken for. And the last one here is Senate Bill 236, which would have allowed businesses to obtain permits for cannabis use and open the door for pot consumption in some public places, is outlawed. It passed it passed through the Senate and the Assembly, but then sat on the Assembly clerk's desk. They never actually brought it to a final vote. And from what I hear from representatives of Assembly Speaker Frierson, they knew the governor had some serious problems with this and was going to veto it, and they didn't have enough votes to overcome a veto.
Right.
And they had limited time, so they just let it die without really challenging it. So that's kind of in the nutshell.
That's the worst one.
Yeah.
That didn't pass.
Well, also another one died, which is not on this list, which was important to a lot of people in the activist community, the patient community, was Senate Bill 329, which, among other things, was going to increase the amounts of both finished product and leaf that patients could have. It would cover the sunsetting of patient grows next year, and that's why I said I'm going to have to read the bills that got passed in the last few hours.
I retract my previous statement. That bill is more important.
Yeah, that's a tough one. We're gonna get reaction on
so
that.
That did not get off that gentleman's desk, did it? We sent emails. We did our best. Did the Facebook blast. I tried to make a phone call. We did everything that we could to
testified for it. I was down at one of these hearings. Other activists from other groups were there. Some of the new Nevada normal people went up to Carson City and testified on it. No. And Tick said there's very little interest in this.
Well, of course, no one gives a shit about the patients anymore.
Yeah.
And it's disappointing because out of all the battles, all the fighting, all the nonsense, and 2013 was like, oh, we got it into the state constitution. We're going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And now here we are just a few short years later.
And we're still not
and
okay.
they're yanking it right back, cutting our legs right out from underneath us. It's nothing sacred.
so here's this article, and we've spent a lot of time on it, but I think it's important. And at the head of this hour, I said I had a little issue with the name of this program of this article, because it was saying that the pot advocates are pleased with this, and so local reaction it follows here, and say members of the Las Vegas marijuana industry call the legislative session astonishing and marveled at the Nevada governor's collective movement to jumpstart its recreational marijuana program. What they've done collectively is unprecedented, said Frank Hawkins, owner of Nevada Wellness Center Marijuana Dispensary. Usually you can't get the government to do anything quickly. We've got comments here from David Goldwater, from Tick Segerblom, and all this stuff, but I don't actually see anybody here who's been in the trenches all these. Recreational pot advocates. These guys that they look at it in this article.
They should say recreational dispensary owners.
They're industry owners. If you do talk to the cannabis advocates in this state, especially in light of
it's funny because I never
passing.
saw any of these owners up at legislative session actually fighting for any of these rights, which led to their ability to operate the businesses that they have now.
No.
I mean, they're all advocates now that they're all making money off of it. That's really funny.
Yeah, well,
I would love to see them at one of our meetings. Any of them, any one of them. Pick one, anyone.
Yeah, but I don't think that most of the advocates, especially the patient advocates, were not in any way pleased with the results of this session. And a lot of the people who were recreational advocates, because there were a lot of people who, with Senate Bill 236, thought that this was their way into the business, that they could take some empty bar or a restaurant like that.
There was never
get their little speaking
so you see, that's the falsity. We've been led down the merry path since the beginning, ever since 2013, when they held our hand collectively and said, "Oh, you patients are going to be the ones who are going to help the dispensaries get off their feet with the medicine that you've grown, and we're going to help you make a little bit of money for the first time in your lives legally, and help to transition you into the legal market and things like that." And they got the big fuck you.
None of that ever happened.
They got the big fuck you. And now we're sitting here a few years later. Oh, don't you worry, all you people that got burned twice, and now you're gonna have the ability to. Nope. You know what? We feel like you don't really deserve that because, well, fuck you. That's why.
That's all the reason a New Yorker needs.
Well, and that's really is what it is. They can justify it by saying whatever they want, but really at the end of the day, they just don't want normal people being involved in this because they're a pain in the ass to deal with or whatever the problem is. Right. It's just really sickening, to tell you the truth. And I don't want to say disheartening because that's too light of a word to use. It's soul crushing and debilitating, all mentally and emotionally debilitating to people to have put their entire lives into this industry, their entire well-being, sacrificed jobs, relationships with friends, family members, been under the gun, had their freedom taken away, some of them, had put their risk constantly, and still get burned because, well, you don't rub elbows with the right people, so up yours.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and to once again digress out of cannabis, we see that the Trump administration is looking at spending $1 trillion on infrastructure and this and that, but taking a look at the infrastructure plan that they're placing out, what they're really doing is not new construction, not repair, but they're privatizing. They want to privatize most of the infrastructure in the country, and they've started just in the past day or so announcing that they were going to the air traffic controllers.
Well, maybe his theory is that government can't run anything right, so you might as well let the private industry do it.
Okay, but without getting into that, historically, it shows that private industry programs tend to be 3 to 4 times more expensive than a government program.
You mean like the false private prisons? etc.
Yes, absolutely. And so the idea, though, is that if you're selling all this stuff off, and in the Trump plan, they would be selling off America at a discount to these. So that would ultimately, at the end of the day, just enrich the people at the top and give everybody else user fees. And when they want to increase their profit margin, once they've got these monopolies, then all they have to do is reduce service, reduce their own infrastructure maintenance, and everybody else gets screwed. And how this tied in is it's very similar to what's happening in the cannabis industry, where you have a few wealthy and politically connected people in any given state, municipality, getting involved in this, and the vast majority of people getting shut out. And it's just
for no good good reason. It's not that they don't deserve to be in the industry. It's just the powers that be don't want competition. They don't want free market capitalism at play, which is, genuinely anti-American in my opinion.
And I would still have an issue,
or un-American,
but less of an issue with this if these people, all these businesses, gotten into this were people who were dedicated, who knew what they were doing, or who were willing to learn and really get involved in this,
or had one philanthropic bone in their body would be nice. I would settle for that.
People I've seen in this, and not all of them, because there are some really good people involved, absolutely. But a goodly number of people that I've seen in this business were not involved at all. Just saw this as a get-rich-quick scheme, and they will. And I think they're exactly the wrong type of people to have.
Absolutely, they are the wrong type of people, but they don't want to hear it because now that they have their clamps into the ownership group, they will defend that right that they have, that status. How dare you insult my capability to operate? Well, what does THC stand for?
Yeah.
What's the difference between an indica and a sativa?
What's
Mr. Operating Manager? Huh? What?
Yeah. Can you tell me what a short path extraction machine is? Yeah, exactly.
Well, I got a license, so you got to listen to me.
Yeah, there you go. So I'll tell you what, we're going to take another quick break and hit a couple more stories and wrap it up.
My name is Janine Evans, and I am the office manager at Getting Legal, and we help people get their medical marijuana cards. Anyone can be approved for a medical marijuana card as long as they have a pre-existing medical condition. The medical conditions recognized in Nevada include severe pain, severe nausea, muscle spasms, seizures, glaucoma, cancer, HIV or AIDS, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Our staff helps every patient determine before they come in for a visit whether or not they will qualify. We take care of the whole process of getting a medical marijuana card from the state of Nevada from start to finish. Our services include paperwork processing, a physician's visit, notary services. All of our patients pick up their approval letters right here in our office. We make it fast, simple, and easy. During your consultation, we will discuss different products available at the dispensaries, such as edibles, lotions, and concentrates. We will also discuss different ways to medicate, such as smoking or vaporizing. You will receive a separate identification card identifying you as a medical marijuana patient. This is used to enter the dispensaries and only to enter the dispensaries. Every veteran receives a discount off of the full price of their card. We also offer discounts to anyone working within the medical marijuana industry. All you need to do is call 702-979-9999 and a member of our friendly staff will help you schedule an appointment.
Welcome back. As we're wrapping up this edition here, we've got more news than time, so I'm just
as usual.
As usual, and it's really incredible because when we started this program, I'd have to hunt and pick and get some really interesting stories, but now we just get overwhelmed. There is so much movement in this industry and in this whole activist movement that there's never a shortage of stories. Now, here's something that's important because we know that cannabis is on Schedule 1 of the Federal Register because the federal government says there is no accepted medical use for it. Well, St. George's University of London has now put out a piece, and they've done a study, and they say that cannabinoids used in sequence with chemotherapy are a more effective treatment for cancer. And this research says that the sequential use of an initial dose of chemotherapy first and then cannabinoids significantly improved overall results against blood cancer cells. They found that combining existing chemotherapy treatments with cannabinoids has better results than chemotherapy alone, meaning that a similar level of effect could be achieved through using a lower dose of chemotherapy along with the cannabinoids. And that's
less poison, more healing.
Less poison, more healing. Boy, that's it in a nutshell. That's the slogan. The Dr. Wei Liu, who led the study at St. George's University, said we have shown for the first time that the order in which cannabinoids and chemotherapy are used is crucial in determining the overall effectiveness of this treatment. I mean,
that's amazing.
Yeah, it really is because I had a patient that I worked with a few years back who had a glioma, brain cancer, and he had surgery to remove it. It grew back, surgery to remove it, grew back, chemo. And I got a call one day, and his wife said, "Oh, John passed away last night," and he had just finished his chemotherapy 10 days before. And what had happened was it had just weakened his veins so much that he just had a bleeding stroke. The veins just let go, and that was it. And so if we can find a way to use less
I don't know if you
chemo
remember,
on people and get the result, that's great.
I don't know if you remember that guy I was kind of hanging out with back in 2013, Craig Rogers from the Cannabis Science Research Foundation. He ended up passing away from a brain tumor, and same story, surgery, remove it came back, remove it came back, radiation, chemo, CBD oil, the whole thing. And what he was telling me as it was getting toward the end there in 2013 was that it was the chemo that was he felt like the treatments were making him sicker than the sickness itself because of the severity. Like as the condition got worse, the intensity of the treatments became more severe in order to combat it, and it was just he just couldn't handle it. Unfortunately,
and that's it, because the chemo burns through your body. It is toxic, and eventually it will. If it doesn't kill the cancer first, it'll kill you second, and that's how it goes. So we've got a few more minutes left. Let's turn to a little bit lighter news here. We see that in Hawaii they're getting ready to today. They are opening their first medical marijuana dispensary.
Finally,
finally in Hawaii. It looks like it's in downtown Honolulu here, and it's terrific. But there's only one problem. They're not going to have any pot to sell.
Okay.
That's insane. After months of discussing and lobbying, the state labs have not been certified, and so they're going to use this space just as a public awareness space for right now.
Meantime.
So you got a dispensary which has no goods to be selling, and the health department in Hawaii, in Honolulu, says that it is still awaiting results to show that the labs can accurately test cannabis products, and hopes to have them up and running by this summer.
Oh hell, I know a whole group of lab people in Vegas who would love to enlighten
every other
them.
State that has some sort of retail mechanism has labs, and they all do it. So I don't know. I don't know why they couldn't do it so well there. That's just how it is.
Things.
Okay, let's see what else is going here. Here's. Why don't you take this one?
Oh, here we go. Okay, here's a good old-fashioned reefer madness story. Let's see. Where is this son out of?
Australia.
This is from the BBC reporting of a story out of Australia. And the title of the article is "Father Tells of Devastation After Son Cuts Off Penis While High." A distraught father was told how his son cut off his own penis while high from a potent form of cannabis as a warning about the dangers of the drug. The unidentified man, of course, told the BBC that his son became paranoid and endured psychotic episodes after smoking the illegal drug. He switched from a bright, bubbly lad to, "I can only describe him as a waste of space." And I've had that conversation with him, and he understands that. His father told BBC Radio 5 Live he became delusional. He used to sleep with a tennis racket in his bed because he thought people were living in the walls. He told me he thought that mermaids existed, and there was
just a lot of stuff. But the good thing is that the father has had a heart-to-heart with the son, and the son has stopped his drugs and alcohol use.
The absurdity of that is not even worth commenting on, to tell you the truth. Because
but anybody listening to this is going to know that those symptoms, or those behaviors, are not pot behaviors. Yes,
if the kid
John
has
over there in meth on his little card.
If the guy
thank you.
Well, if he has a psychological. Maybe the kid has psychological underlying issues that are being triggered by the cannabis, or maybe he has other medicines that he was taking that had an interaction or something to that effect.
That would be a first. I've got to admit that in all the years I've been around and looking at these things, I've never heard of somebody.
Why is it that people
before.
seem to enjoy fabricating stories about cannabis? I saw on the Eastsiders Taking Action page in Las Vegas, there's a whole about 2,600 people who talk about the problems within their community in the East Side. They try to fix it. and things that bring things to the county commissioner's attention, etc. And this lady was talking about there was a marijuana. And she's like, oh, marijuana's so bad, and went into this ridiculous story about, oh, I saw someone overdose on pot and blah blah blah. And I'm just like, you're so full of shit that it's coming out of your ears. Like, I am calling you out right now on your lies. Like, if you have a constructive argument against cannabis, I will hear it and try to defeat it. But if you're going to sit here and just spout blatant lies, I am going to call you a liar. And it's just, I cannot understand why people have the need in their head, full-grown adults, to fabricate stories about this when there is plenty of information out there that we could discuss objectively.
Because they don't want to discuss it objectively. They want to win their argument from their limited perspective. I like people who are full of shit. I like to put them in my garden and say, spew away. My plants need the fertilizer.
No kidding.
So, all right. Finally here, out in New Mexico, McDonald's franchise owner decided to have a little fun in this town called Rayton, New Mexico, which I've never heard of, but is apparently just 12 miles south of the Colorado border. The local McDonald's owner put up a billboard on a stretch of I-25 near exit 451, and it features an image of the egg and chili stuffed burrito alongside large white lettering that reads, usually when you roll something this good, it's illegal. And, a local outlet first reported on the photo, and we're going to post this on the video here so you can take a look at it. The radio station that first reported claims the joke is being well received by the locals, some of whom noted that its placement is key because, there will be people coming out of Colorado into New Mexico who might have accidentally left a few crumbs of pot in their car. The McDonald's Corporation, however, did not seem to agree.
They're actually doing a public service by enlightening people as to the state laws if you want to get technical.
Yeah,
okay, sure.
You bet. But McDonald's is forcing that owner to take it down, and that's it.
As long as that's all they do, that's okay. Yeah. Don't give them too much crap, because that's good-hearted fun right there.
Okay, we got anything coming up close on weekend?
No, nothing that I'm aware of. We have our Patients First meeting coming up
absolutely.
this Saturday
at
the Source at 2 o'clock at the Source Dispensary on the, I forgot which corner it is.
It's
I believe
Rainbow and Sahara, southeast corner.
Thank you.
And come on to the meeting, and you'll get a discount coupon for the Source, so you can save a few bucks there as well. And there is just way too much news to report, so you're just going to have to come back next week and see what else we've got. So thanks for joining us.
See you next time.